Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Tuesday, June 29th, 2021. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, as always, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Well, she's the queen of cool, but she doesn't suffer fools. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. It is Sheila Gunn. Reid, how you doing, my friend?
David, I have never been better. Look at that shirt. Look at that shirt. That's the David Menzies, the Menzoid shirt.
There it is.
Oh,
yes.
It's great.
This is perhaps the greatest day of my life, as opposed to the worst day of my life when I sold my comic book collection for a used Camaro, and those comics appreciated into a brand new Ferrari off the lot today. But yeah, the people here thought, I guess they think so nicely of me, Sheila. They've come out with this shirt, the Menzoid, well, as you know, illustrations, as they say in the marketing business, not exactly as illustrated in terms of the lower half from the neck down. And I got to tell you, I was prompted to wear this shirt, not because I'm an egomaniac that I want to walk down the street with my own image on my own shirt, but I was talking to Mr. Vice President, and he said it's selling well, but it's not the runaway bestseller that they thought it would be. And I thought, well, we got to change that. I got to promote this. I got to do a little advertising on the live stream. We got to move the merchandise. And I'm going back into the old time radio days. How about this, Sheila, as an offer? The first Rebel News viewer I see on the street that comes up to me with this shirt, I am going to give you $100. I'll say it like Dr. Evil, $100.
No way.
Now, you might not think that's a lot of money, but folks, that's a lot of money to me. I mean, I'm not a millionaire. I'm not even a thousandaire, okay? Last time I looked at my bank balance. So if you buy one of these shirts, you have a chance of more than doubling your money. Look at that, a brownie. Who's on? That's Borden. He's still there, right? We haven't replaced him with like, I don't know, something more politically correct. But if you come up to me, that is going to go into your pocket. What do you think about those apples, Sheila Gunn, Reid?
Well, I'm sad that I didn't order the shirt yet. It's sitting in my cart on this store, but I'm trying to put a bunch of stuff in there so that I can, maximize my discount on the store. But that's a very generous offer, and I think that you are going to find quite a few anti-lockdown protesters in Toronto wearing that beautiful shirt. I mean, David, I had the final say on what the shirt looked like before it went out the door. I did.
You're responsible for this. Man, in orange, does that not
I love
pop?
it.
I mean,
love it.
Folks, you will never be lost at sea wearing the orange version of this shirt. And oh, by the way, a little asterisk in case anyone thinks the fix is in a la Vegas or the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. This does not apply to any of my co-worker weasels that might go into the storeroom and don a shirt, or family or friends. It's got to be a complete stranger, like Sheila said, maybe somebody at a lockdown protest. We cover a lot of those. Or maybe just somebody seeing me on the street. Sometimes we get honked at. I think they're honking at us with the thumbs up. Sometimes it's a different finger. But regardless, if you are wearing this shirt this summer, the first one, and it's only the first one, and by the way, I want your name in case I get anything like, yeah, I saw the Menzoid on Yonge Street and I ran up to him in my shirt and he didn't give me $100 and he claimed some other person. But yes, you have to give me your name so I can say such and such got to me first, and they have $100. And Mr. Producer saying, yeah, of course you can never make that up. But those are the rules. That's the fine print. And please, folks, go on to that store site of ours and order your shirts. Don't make Mr. Vice President here read me the riot act over something I had no control over in the first place. And that's all I have to say about that, she-devil.
Actually, you know what, Justin, can you bring the store back up? Because we should take a peek around. There's new stuff in that store all the time. And friends at home, if you would like one of David Menzies' The Menzoid shirts, you can use the coupon code Menzies10 for 10% off.
It's all beautiful, folks, but all you really want to buy is the Menzoid T-shirt in multiple numbers. Listen, Christmas is what, just 5 or 6 months away? So think of all your loved ones. Think of their faces lighting up at the Christmas tree when they open the package and they get one of those shirts. You know, I can see Mr. Producer, he's smiling already. He was doing his happy dance already, Sheila, because he's thinking of the actual real stores opening in Ontario 2 days early tomorrow. So he was doing that little twist of his. Think of a duck on a paint shaker. That's Justin's happy dance. And anyways, but you saw what we do have in the store. Yeah, all kidding aside, folks, we have some beautiful merchandise there. Great designs, great messages. I mean, forget about little
Save
me.
the Pastors one. Save the Pastors one. I think that's really great. In particular, here in Alberta, we've had 3 pastors arrested. Tim Stevens, we got word yesterday that he will be in jail until at least the 12th of July. So while all the politicians are shopping for their Stampede outfits, Tim Stevens is languishing in jail for the crime of opening his church and not turning away congregants. Really, that's what it comes down to. He refused to turn away people who came to his church to meet some sort of arbitrary government restriction on attendance. And then they stuff him into a prison where they've had coronavirus outbreaks as opposed to what is happening at his church, where he's had none, in front of his kids twice now. It's my understanding that not just Senator Josh Hawley and not just Scott Walker in the United States, but it sounds like there's about 24 high-profile U.S. politicians, senators, congressmen, and governors, former and otherwise, who are keenly aware to the situation here in Alberta. And if this situation were happening in Hong Kong, to the Catholic Church, I mean, I've got a book on my shelf here written by Cardinal Zen. He's the cardinal from Hong Kong, talking about the government overreach into the churches. They're telling people how they can worship and how they should interpret the Bible. Isn't that really what's happening here? Telling people like Tim Stevens how he should interpret the meaning of gathering together every single week as prescribed to him in the Bible. That's really what's happening here. And so if you want to show your support for all pastors, not just Tim Stevens, not just James Coates, who also spent 35 days in jail, but Pastor Art Pawlowski, might I suggest that Save the Pastors shirt. Throw it in the cart with your Menzoid shirt and use the coupon code Menzies10 for a 10% discount. And we just got word this morning from both the neighbors of Grace Life Church and the congregants that the fences are coming down this morning.
Oh, how gracious of them. But you know, Sheila, you said something very profound there when you referenced Hong Kong. You know, I think I've said this before, but if I went back in time 2 years ago, 2019, and I got a future glimpse of our Rebel News store, and I saw a T-shirt with no context, and it said Save the Pastors, that's what I would assume. Is this a Hong Kong initiative? Something in North Korea, Syria? You know, Christian pastors being rounded up and going to jail? But no, Canada, and of all places in Canada, Alberta. You know, the home of Jason Kenney, who was once a champion of religious freedom in the Stephen Harper government as an MP. This is how surreal this is to me, Sheila.
Well, and, you know, I see a lot of people saying, oh, these men are doing it for attention. They could not be more different. They absolutely, all 3 men, James Coates, Tim Stevens, and Art Pawlowski, they could not be more different. Different faith practices, different faith backgrounds, and they're all compelled to defy the laws of man to be obedient to God. They all have, you know, different interpretations of the Bible, and it doesn't matter their style, because, you know, there are people out there who say, I don't like Pastor Art's style. He said this about that 5 years ago. Okay, great. But what does that have to do with locking him up because he didn't turn people away? People say, you know, like, I don't like James Coates. He's doing it for attention. I've met James. I've talked to him a fair bit. Not even. This is not what he asked for. This is not some, but it's something that he found himself faced with. And Tim Stevens, He's a bookish Baptist minister. I mean, again, these men could not be more different, but that saved none of them from the wrath of the government.
You're absolutely right. These men are not publicity hounds, Sheila, which is not to say that this doesn't happen in this business. I mean, I always think of, Ashley Madison, it's a website that facilitates extramarital affairs. And usually around January, they make a pitch to the NFL and whoever's carrying the Super Bowl. They want to buy an ad. And of course, they're turned down. They're not interested in them being an advertiser. So what Ashley Madison does is put out a press release, and they, in effect, get millions of dollars of free publicity going, oh, boo-hoo, the mean old NFL and NBC won't run our ad. They know ahead of time they're not going to get that ad space. In fact, my suggestion to the NFL is to say, okay, it's $4 million for 30 seconds. Can we have your check? Call their bluff. But what I'm getting at, Sheila, there are those characters in this business that deliberately do something, whether, the example I gave, or breaking the law, just because they want the publicity. But that's not these gentlemen at all. They just want to practice their religion in peace. They never set out for this. They never, as the old Bruce Springsteen lyric goes, they didn't go down to the bar wearing trouble on their shirts. The trouble came to them. And the fact that the head troublemaker is Premier Kenney, Sheila, this is just so embarrassing at the end of the day.
It is embarrassing, and it's also embarrassing to see the people who are defending him from within his own government. I saw that Ben Harper, Stephen Harper's son, who now works for Jason Kenney, has basically called us clickbait and extremists. Well, you know what? Whatever. But is Josh Hawley an extremist? Is Scott Walker literally the most bland Republican money can buy? Is he an extremist now because he's concerned about what's happening here in Alberta? I mean, maybe the extremist phone call friend is coming from inside the house. And I like Ben. I've defended Ben from attacks from the left before. I think, like if your dad was the prime minister and you naturally, I mean, his career trajectory took him into Jason Kenney's office. That makes perfect sense to me. But like I said, maybe that extremist phone call is coming from inside the house because I'm not the one locking up pastors. Exactly. I'm not the one justifying 35 days in jail for Pastor James Coates, keeping the church from a congregation for 90 days, driving Christian congregations underground, arresting pastors on Calgary freeways, and arresting Tim Stevens in front of his children twice, not once, but twice. Sorry, but that's the extremist. Defending religious freedom from the government during an emergency, which is always when the government takes away your fundamental freedoms. They always use an emergency to do it. I'm sorry, that's not the extremist view. That's the conservative position. And wouldn't it be great if a conservative would take it?
Yeah. And Sheila, we do have a Pastor Art update, and it's not really good news. But before we get to it, why don't you do your shtick where you tell the folks out there our ostensible policy reason of what it is the heck we're trying to do here in the first place?
Right. 13 minutes on the air and haven't told anybody what we're doing.
People are tuning in going, listen to those two chattering hens. What are they talking about?
It's a miracle that neither one of us gets fired every single day around here.
Don't even say that out loud.
You know what? I've got charm going for me. I don't know what saves you from firing. But anyway, I'm kidding. I'm David's biggest fan.
I'm going to go into John Candy mode, Oh, please, Mr. Caballero, don't fire me, please.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so what are we doing here today? I see my Skype feed is coming in and out. It's getting pixelated, but it's summertime, so I probably have two kids on the internet instead of just one trying to take a Zoom school call. So what we're doing here today is the Rebel News daily live stream. It used to just be on Friday, just hosted by Ezra. Pandemic hit. There's more news than ever, despite what the mainstream media is talking about, which is Justin Trudeau's once weekly wander out to talk to people thing that he does. We think there's more news than ever. The situation is changing day by day. For example, in Ontario, you guys might be able to buy socks in a couple of days. So congratulations. So we sit down, we talk to our viewers every single day for an hour. David and I host Tuesdays and Thursdays, Ezra Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It used to be a great way for us to make some money and pay the bills around here. But then YouTube, the censorship platform of YouTube, demonetized us and cut a big $400,000 chunk right through the middle of the company.
Wow.
And, you know, it's only a matter of time before they deplatform us on YouTube altogether. However, we've got plan B through, I guess, Z in the works. We are still streaming on YouTube because we think it's a great place for people to find us. But if you are watching us on YouTube, might I suggest you just take an off-ramp to one of the other more free speechy platforms that don't hate you. For example, there's Rumble, where we're streaming on right now. We also are streaming on Super U, which is a great free speechy platform. And you can leave us a tip there, which is a new feature as they develop new features to support their content creators. And we're also streaming on Odyssey. And on Odyssey, you can leave us something called a hyper chat. You just have to buy some of their library cryptocurrency. Don't understand cryptocurrency, but it is definitely on one of those things that I am aiming. It's on my list of things that I need to understand. But if you buy some of their library cryptocurrency, you can donate some of that to us, and we will read your chat on air once Justin sends it to me. And I think that's it.
Justin says we do have a bunch of chats already. Shall we go to them right away, Mr. Producer, or run the Pastor Art video? Okay, we'll go to the chat, Sheila.
We'll go to the chats because we have great, well-trained viewers who know what they're supposed to be doing even when David and I don't. So let's get to that. We've got a Super U shout, I believe it's called, from Annalisa. Yahoo, I got my Menzies shirt. Oh, Menzies, you're looking mighty buff, I might add. Love you both.
As I said before, Annalisa, not exactly as illustrated under this shirt, let me tell you. Whose body did we put my head on anyway, Sheila? We may as well be honest about this.
I think it's Triple H.
Triple H.
I think it's Triple H. I recognize the black trunks anyway. Alrighty, we've got a hyper chat from History Club World. Do you think there will be any consequences for the government's actions against pastors? What dirt do you think got rid of Climate Barbie? Follow History Club World on Instagram. Okay, first question, I'll answer your first question. What do you think do you think there will be any consequences for the government's actions against pastors? I think the consequences are far greater than the government thinks. I think that they think if they open up for stampede that people are just going to forget, or people are so scared of Rachel Notley that they're going to forget what Jason Kenney did. And I think there's a fair bit of that. I am worried about Rachel Notley getting back into power. So naturally, people are worried about that too. However, I think for a lot of people who are conservative in values, but not conservative in partisanship, and there's a lot of that in Alberta. For example, our conservative movement fractures all the time, from the PCs to the Wild Rose. Reform grew out of Alberta. So there are people who are less partisan and more conservative in values, and this is going to be a tough pill to swallow for Jason Kenney to come back around and ask them for their vote, seeing what has happened to these churches. And for a lot of people, these aren't their denominations, but they believe in religious freedom. And there's a lot of people who are like, I'm not even religious, but I just don't, I think arresting pastors is a bad thing. There's a lot of that out there too. And I think Jason Kenney is going to have a lot of apologizing and making up to do before that's fixed. However, if his staffers are out on Twitter calling people extremists for thinking, hey, we shouldn't be locking up pastors, I don't think that's helpful either. I think you've got a bit of a communications nightmare on your hands.
I agree 100%, Sheila. I think the only factor in Premier Kenney's favor is simply time. That as the months go by and there's more and more opening and less restrictions, and things get back to normal or something approaching normal, people will forget, the dark times when pastors were being rounded up and thrown in maximum security jails. Other than that, he's got nothing. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to forget when I see politicians on the pancake breakfast circuit during Stampede coming up right away. When I see them in their brand new cowboy boots and their Wranglers that they crack out for one day a year, flipping pancakes and glad-handing people and kissing babies, I will not forget that Tim Stevens is still in jail.
Yeah. I
won't forget. And the second part of your question, History Club World, what dirt do you think got rid of Climate Barbie? I don't know if it's dirt, but I think she seriously mishandled the infrastructure file. Like she's just losing track of billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of projects. But in the federal government, you don't get fired for ineptitude. You fail upwards all the way into the prime minister's office. I mean, what was the largest file that the prime minister actually handled before he became prime minister? Wasn't he the associate minister of like amateur sport or something ridiculous like that? Like, I can't even believe there was somebody in charge of that. I'm not associate minister. I think the critic, right? Because he wasn't in government. He was the critic for amateur sport. And then all of a sudden he's the prime minister. So, I think that she's just resigning before a lot of the mishandling of literally billions of dollars comes to light. That's what I think.
And you know, Sheila, I think, speaking to the Prime Minister, I think even Justin Trudeau was growing very weary of her act, of all this sanctimonious, speeches that she would make. I have a video coming up. She was in Toronto last week, and it was absolutely perverse. She's doing a tour of the waterfront of Toronto, which is no waterfront. Let me tell you, folks, it's a concrete jungle. And she pointed to this tiny little patch of land called Sugar Beach, Canada's Sugar Beach, no less. And here's the funny thing, Sheila, riddle me this. When you go to the beach, what is there a normal expectation of once you get to the beach? It's water, right? You want to go swimming.
Yeah.
A beach without water, you know what that is, Sheila? That's a desert. If you go to Canada's Sugar Beach, there are actually signs forbidding you under penalty of law for taking a jump into the water. And not that you'd want to, because it is extremely polluted. Now, like I said, this was all about the improvement of infrastructure. Why not have some kind of, I'm not an engineer, but I'm sure it can be done. Why not a policy where Toronto, be it Canada's Sugar Beach or the Western beaches, don't get polluted, whether it's, fecal contamination or other pollutants? Why not do something like that where the citizens of this city on a scorching hot day like that can actually go into Lake Ontario? No, it's all about the sizzle and not the steak, Sheila. That is the former Climate Barbie. It's all about, oh, look what I've done, but you scratch beneath the surface, you've done nothing. She was talking about Canada Sugar Beach being a former parking lot. You know what it is now? It's a former parking lot with sand on top of it. You can't go into the lake. How is this a gift to Toronto from the federal government, from the infrastructure minister? It's such a joke. And I got to tell you, Sheila, it's nauseating to see her. She did the de rigueur, want to spend more time with the family. And, you don't know what it's like, all these years of online hate. If I could think of one of the most privileged women in Canada to play the victim card, and of course no mention, Sheila, that she now qualifies for that 6-figure pension for life from the federal government. She's put in enough hours for that. Yeah, I'm sure that had nothing to do with her backing away. But as far as I'm concerned, Sheila, good riddance.
Yeah, you know what? Leave it to the federal government to just dump sand, construction materials on a parking lot and call it Sugar Beach, where there's actually no beach and no sugar. It's the perfect federal government nonsense. And I'm sure this cost hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm sure of it.
Sheila, that's not quite true. About a football field away is the Redpath Sugar Refinery, because she said this former industrial area. It's an industrial area still. They're refining sugar there. And when Mocha and I went down there yesterday, there was this enormous oil tanker-like ship, right beside the refinery. Yeah, that's what I want to see when I go to the beach. Right? Freighters coming in and out.
I know exactly what you're talking about. When I was in Toronto last time, my daughter and I got there, and there's nothing to do in Toronto, so we're like, let's go for a run.
Yeah.
And we ran down the harbor, down past the Red Path?
Red Path, correct.
Yeah, and then I had to explain to her how the government runs the liquor stores there, because there's like a big LCBO store right across the street. Am I right?
Yes, that's one of their so-called flagship stores. In other words, here's a store we spent millions on that no private entrepreneur in a competitive system would ever dream constructing. Yeah, the Queen's Quay flagship store, you ran right past that too.
Yeah, and
I hope you didn't try to buy any scotch.
No, because it was like after 6 o'clock in the evening, so everything closed. Oh, Toronto. What a failed state. Anyway, let's keep going. We've got a Rumble, I forget what the chats are called over there. Rumble chat from Ryan Rossi says, David's getting in shape. Yeah, I very rarely see David in a t-shirt, and I like what I see.
Wow, woo, look at that. I'll take it. Well, you know what? I'll be honest, folks, I am still fat. However, without my cycling program, I would be circus fat. It was a tough cycle yesterday, Sheila. The saddle time, was really gearing me down. It was so hot in the GTA yesterday. I'm telling you, I saw a dog chasing a cat. They were both walking.
David, it is. I know that's the oldest, worst joke. In Alberta right now, it is 32 degrees.
Wow.
Headed up to 35. It's 36 tomorrow, 37 the next day. Yeah, it's not bad. Finally, for once, I am complaining about the heat.
Alberta fascinates me, Sheila. I mean, these extremes, you're getting plus 36. We could be talking 6 months later, it's minus 36 without the wind chill. And yet, 120 million years ago, this was a tropical grassland with dinosaurs running around.
Yeah.
But of course, we killed them off with our SUVs running, so we don't have the dinosaurs anymore.
Sheila's Jeep strikes again. Okay. Let's keep going. We've got a Rumble from Books and Tea. Love the shirt. Yes, I do. I'm sad that I don't have one. I've just got to pull the trigger and buy it on the store.
Yes, buy it. Don't get a freebie. Mr. Vice President is watching every sale that goes out on that store.
I know he is. We've got a hyper chat from Binga. Oh my God, haha, David wearing the Hulk Hogan pose. David, thanks for the laugh. And all we see is green fire on Sheila. Thanks for all the hard work of all the rebels. By the way, shout out to Justin.
He missed that. But thank you, Binga, on the behalf of Mr. Producer.
Justin's asleep at the wheel.
Oh, boy.
Oh, there it is. We've got a Rumble chat from Share21. Stevens did not bend the knee. Yeah. We've got a hyper chat from History Club World. Rebel News should have an Internews Company wrestling match or something like that. It would be funny to see Sheila wrestle someone from CBC or CTV.
And you know what? On that file, I'll be the manager, okay? Who would you like to wrestle the most, Sheila? Would it be Rosemary Barton?
She's a lot bigger than me. I gotta give some thought. I didn't mean that in a bad way, David. I'm just not a big woman. I'm a small woman, right? Like I am. So I just need to find somebody who's in my, I was going to say weight class, but size
Sheila,
class. Let's just.
The bigger they are, the harder they fall. You know that. She'd be going down like a redwood.
No, I have to give some thought to whom I would wrestle, but I still would like to Foxy box the guy who punched me in the face.
Oh.
Dion Buse. I would do that for charity in a heartbeat.
Oh, that's a mismatch.
Let's keep going. Before we get in a world of trouble. Okay. Super You shout from Hammers Girl 88. Another sad day in Canada yesterday. Yes, terrible. With convictions for contempt in Alberta, 3 of them. and then finding out that Pastor Tim Stevens would remain in jail until at least July 12th. That's his next court date. It's not his release date. So imagine his devastated family. Let's just breeze through these, and then we'll get to our update on the contempt stuff. A Super U tip from my buddy Mike. Mike Mayer, he's with People versus Predators and Freedom Honey, and he tipped us $10. And that's so kind because I accidentally sent half the people on my Facebook Messenger list yesterday some random video as I tried to turn off my phone at 2:30 in the morning because it was beeping, and instead I just forwarded them a bunch of garbage. So sorry about the message at 2:30 in the morning, Mike, and thank you so much for the tip. We've got a Super U tip from Annalisa. She tipped us $20. Annalisa,
Nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Annalisa.
That's more for David than it is for me, I'm sure.
It's all for the company. It's all for the greater good, Sheila.
Mike Mayer, my Freedom Honey friend, let's just stop right here and talk about Freedom Honey. I don't know a lot about the company, but I'm very excited to be a customer. It's called Freedom Honey, and it is founded by Mike, who is a Canadian Forces veteran, and his friend. And it's their little side hustle business, and I'm really excited to see what they do next. But Mike is also very active with People versus Predators, and he says thank you for everything you two do from your friends at People versus Predators and Freedom Honey. You guys are formulating an official parliamentary petition, are you not, Mike? I'll talk to you off air, but I'd sure love to cover that because I think you guys are going to do great things, trying to change the laws to keep bad guys behind bars. Which is funny because we can't seem to keep the guys who hurt kids behind bars, but we've got pastors in jail.
And since he's a honey maker, all I have to say, Mike, is be thanking you.
Do you know what? Someone's going to take that emoji away from you. Friends at home, that's how David signs every text or email to me is just a bee emoji, and it means be thanking you, and he knows that I don't like it, so then I just send him knife emojis back. Okay, let's keep going. We've got a hyper chat from History Club World. Rebel News should give a few Save the Pastor shirts to any politician that speaks out against the arrest. We should also send them to the Alberta Cabinet and Notley. I like doing things for spite. It's not a terrible idea.
I like it.
We'd probably need a sponsor to help us offset the cost of the T-shirts, because we're crowdfunded and it's difficult to just give stuff away. But that's not a terrible idea. We've got a Rumble chat from Frog Soup. That shirt is badass. Yeah, I love it. The look on your face is so terrific.
Thank you,
I'm
Frog
99% sure that's Triple H. With the elbow pads, I think that's Triple H.
I think you're right. That's not a copyright infringement or anything like that, is it?
I think we're okay because it's got your head.
Okay.
I think we'll stop right here, even though we have 10 more chats to get to, and maybe we can get to some of the other news of the day that we wanted to talk about. I think the contempt guilty verdicts for Pastor Art Pawlowski, his brother David, and Chris Scott of the Whistle Stop Cafe. All three were found guilty yesterday by the same judge. They were issued their judgments all at the same time. Apparently, all three of them met the requirements in Alberta to be found in contempt of a judge's court order, and those are that they had prior knowledge of the order so that they were appropriately served, that the act being restrained in the order and the person being restrained was clear. I'm not sure that's the case. And that there was intent to break the order. And in the case of Pastor Art Pawlowski, he was given 2.5 minutes to read, understand, and comply with a judge's court order that gave police and health services full reign to inspect his church during services. Pastor Art's first language is not English, and he can be seen in that video saying, "Please contact my lawyer. Please contact my lawyer." And they never did until after. And the court orders sought against all of these guys were done in secret. So they know, Alberta Health Services knows full well that Pastor Art has Sarah Miller from JSS working for him. And they know that Chris Scott has Chad Williamson from Williamson Law working for him. thanks to the generous donations of everybody at home who donates through fightthefines.com. The government knows about these lawyers because the government has been up against these lawyers already a few times. But the government, or AHS, the government, went before a judge, 2 different judges, and didn't inform the court that these guys were represented by lawyers, which is a procedural violation. And then secondarily, didn't inform the lawyers that there were proceedings happening against their clients, which is a charter violation because you're denying people the right to be represented by a lawyer that they have and that they're represented by. And yet still, these guys were all found in contempt yesterday.
I think you're putting it kindly, Sheila, when you call it a procedural violation and a charter violation. Let's get to the bottom of it. This is Banana Republic stuff we're seeing in Alberta under a conservative government. Shocking. But without further ado, let's go to the wonderful report by our reporter. Well, the report's not wonderful. It's actually very disappointing. The reporter is wonderful. That would be Adam Seuss in Calgary. Here's the latest on Pastor Art.
Community of faith.
Hello friends, this is Pastor Artur Pawlowski. I am, of course, greatly saddened by the judge's decision that have found us in contempt of court order on all the charges for 2 proceedings. I'm saddened because the notion that the pastor can be found in contempt of court order for simply doing his job, for opening the church, for saving lives, for helping people that are in desperate need, people that are suicidal, people that are depressed, people that don't know where to turn, people that are overwhelmed by all those different crazy, difficult things that we're facing in our society these days. It's egregious. It's absolutely sad what has become, what happened to our beloved Canada. So me and my brother David, we have been found in contempt of court order. Me for 2 counts, my brother David for 1. And it breaks my heart because what happened to the justice system these days? One law for me, one law for thee. And I guess if we have been found guilty, also those gentlemen here should be found guilty of the contempt of court order as well, because the same Rook's order applies, of course, to all Albertans, including them. So let me read some of them. Premier Jason Kenney should be found in contempt of court order for breaking the Rook's order as well, and Environmental and Parks Minister Jason Nixon, he should be found in contempt of court order. Finance Minister Travis Taves, he should be found in contempt of court order as well. And Health Minister, of course, this hypocrites that have ordered our arrest for simply doing our job, for saving lives, for feeding the poor, for giving hope to the hopeless, for pastors that are preventing suicides and health issues here in the province of Alberta. This hypocrite, Minister Tyler Shandro, he should be found in contempt of court order as well. So I'm looking forward to their court hearings. I'm looking forward for them to answer for them breaking the law in a sky palace. It cannot be in a free and democratic society that there's one law for me and one law for thee. I mean, the level of hypocrisy right now is unbelievable. The level of double standards that we see right now in our system, it's shocking, it's heartbreaking, and saddens me greatly, because what kind of a country are we going to have when the ministers that are putting the orders, they themselves do not care about those orders. They're breaking their own mandates, and they don't care about the justice system. It's just a system for them to be abused and used, and that's sad. You gotta remember, I grew up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets. That's exactly, those were the tactics of the communists. They were telling you what you were allowed to do, but they themselves do not follow the same orders. One law for them, one law for the rest of the people, masters and slaves. Right now we see the repetition of the same scenario. Those people, those ministers, those premiers, those mayors, they can do whatever they want and they can get away with that. And the rest of us, slaves, well, we are subjected to the proceedings, courts, arrests, and tickets. So I need your prayers, please pray. So this evil, this great evil that we're witnessing in our country is going to be revoked, broken, and what else can I say? We will keep speaking the truth. We'll keep fighting for the future of this country so Canada would stand strong and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. As you remember, this great nation was built on truth and justice, and we should all strive to achieve that once again, that Canada, the Canada that we received those 30, 40, 50, 100 years before would be passed to the next generations to come. So be blessed and pray for us.
The sanction period.
You know, Sheila, I found some of those words so chilling when Pastor Art talks about growing up behind the Iron Curtain, and the tactics Alberta, the Albertan government, I should say, is using is the same tactics that the Soviets used decades ago. I mean, again, it is surreal and disturbing to me. And think of those two images. You know, we should do a contrast, because I think this says it all. It is Pastor Art when he was dragged out of his car on a live lane of Calgary highway traffic. Absolutely shameful. No reason for that. They know where he lives. They know where he goes. And contrast that image of him being dragged on the highway with the image of Kenny and Chandro and all the rest in the Sky Palace, living high off the hog with that luxurious dinner they were consuming. Wow. And then you say, why is it Pastor Art is getting the anvil dropped on him, and these head honchos, the people that should be leading by example, they get off scot-free?
Yeah. In the case of Chris Scott, we are appealing that this week in the appeals court here in Alberta. So tomorrow, Wednesday is a very busy day, again, on the Freedom Beat. There's a hearing for Pastor Coates that's happening in the morning, and we are in front of an appeals court judge trying to argue that it was not Chris Scott who broke the law, but rather the government that broke the law when they sought this order in secret, this procedurally flawed order that Chad Williamson says violates the fundamental principles of justice, that the government can sneak around behind your back and get these orders restraining your civil liberties. And if you break the order, you will be incarcerated, and you never once had an opportunity to participate in the process or argue in your own defense. So wish us luck tomorrow, and we will keep fighting. But I am seriously concerned that the legal battle here in Alberta is very uphill, because the judge that issued the rulings yesterday, Justice Adam Germain, he's tasked with dealing with almost all of these issues. This is his special assignment. Deal with the coronavirus scofflaws. And so based on what I saw yesterday, and I think things are going to be very tough here in Alberta. He was at the same time, very complimentary to our lawyers, but I think he knows what his job is. So it doesn't matter. Like, I think even when our lawyers are making these very compelling arguments, he's sent to be the fixer. I think that's my opinion.
You know, Sheila, I think you're right. And anytime you go up against a government or a law, it is an uphill battle. And what is so egregious about this case is that the government lawyers are essentially, for lack of a better word, they're cheating. They're doing these procedural violations. It's already a Herculean task for Pastor Art, and you have to do this kind of garbage behind the scenes. That is shocking, and but it's not over. We're appealing, right?
No, it's not over. We're appealing. We're just not sure on what grounds we're doing that yet, because the judge's written decision, yesterday he gave the oral decision. Yeah. The written decision should be in our lawyers' email inbox in about an hour and 15 minutes. So once they get a chance to go through that, they'll give us an update about how best we can proceed going forward. So the fight isn't even close to over yet. I mean, think about this. In the case of David Poloski, the order was served to him in a plastic baggie, dropped at his feet. That's how they served it to him. And that, everybody testified that they don't even know what happened to the baggie after they dropped it at his feet. But that constituted service of a court order here in Alberta, and that constituted the person getting the order, understanding the order. And David was found in contempt of that. I mean, just think about that.
Why? What was the reason for that, Sheila? Dropping a plastic baggie at his feet as opposed to handing it to the man?
He wouldn't take it, so they just dropped it at his feet. And I think it was raining that day, so it's in a plastic baggie. They just dropped it, and that was it. Nobody knew what happened to the order after that. They don't know if David read it. Nobody can say where that order went after they just dropped it at his feet. But according to a judge yesterday in Calgary, that is service and understanding of the order.
You know, this is another shameful way the state is acting, because I go back to earlier this month, Sheila, when I was in Hamilton covering an anti-lockdown protest, and Hamilton bylaw, they didn't even show up on the scene. They took a picture of me with a telephoto lens getting within arm's length of a protester who I was interviewing, and then emailed me the ticket. Not even doing, usually it's a peace officer or at the very least a courier that brings it to you. No, a simple email. And we discussed this at the time. It was a special kind of ticket called an AMPS, an administrative, municipal, I can't remember the other two words. I should know this. But basically what it translates into is you cannot fight this in the court of law. You have to pay. And it is like drive-through justice. You know, they're trying to make it so easy for themselves. And let's not get involved with that justicey part, whether it's me getting my day in court with this Hamilton ticket for $560, folks. Can you imagine? By the way, there was none of these tickets going out to pro-Hamas demonstrators in May at this very same City Hall Square. None of these tickets went out to Black Lives Matter demonstrators outside City Hall last year. So they're very selective politically who they're going to give. And by the way, that protest, there was like 9 people there. I mean, it was socially distanced galore. It's a fix. That's all I have to. What does Ezra like to quote Tommy saying? It's a stitch up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Where's the presumption of innocence if you don't have the ability to argue for your innocence?
Yeah. I agree. And shamefully, in the case of the AMPS ticket, this survived the charter challenge by the Supreme Court. Yeah, they're fine with Canadian citizens not having their day in court. How could any judge, let alone a Supreme Court justice, think that's a good idea? They are animals of the justice system. The court is their bailiwick, and they're saying, yeah, courts aren't required. This is crazy.
Well, think about the court orders that are coming down in Alberta. You heard Pastor Art referred to the Rook order. So that's the May 6th Rook order. I think it will go down in infamy. That's the one that Alberta Health Services sought in secret against Chris Scott, Glenn Carrot. So Glenn is a municipal politician in central Alberta who just is trying to hold campaign events in person. And Chris Scott, they sought the order to preemptively block him from holding a protest against the government seizing his restaurant, gas station, convenience store, and campground in the same week, resulting in the collective punishment of the entire town of Mirror because they cut them off from their only convenience store within 20 kilometers. They did it in secret. Chad Williamson, the lawyer, only found out about the order after it had been granted at like 6 o'clock the next day.
So that's how they're rolling in Alberta. Star chambers, eh, Sheila?
Exactly. Yeah. Alberta Health Services goes in front of this judge, doesn't inform the judge that Chris Scott has a lawyer, doesn't inform Chris Scott's lawyer that there's a proceeding against him, gets the order, and now the government is using this order that specifically only names Chris Scott and Glenn Carrot to arrest everybody else. That's the order that they used to arrest Art Pawlowski on the street. That's the order that they've used to arrest Tim Stevens. Because not only did they say Chris Scott, they shoehorned unnamed Jane and John Does. So all of us are in legal jeopardy now if we don't exactly follow the coronavirus regulations. It's insane. And to hear Jason Kenney's staffers say that you're an extremist if you think that the government shouldn't be sneaking around behind closed doors and violating people's right to be represented by a lawyer. I mean, give me a break. The entire conservative movement in Alberta needs to be gutted, and it needs to be built again from the ground up. And so many of these people just need to wander the desert in exile.
You know, Sheila, I'm very confused right now what an extremist means. I mean, in the Edmonton area, isn't that where little Omar Khadr is living with a $10.5 million taxpayer check? So he's a multimillionaire by his type of extremism, but somebody just trying to open their store, that is an extremist? Did the world go upside down with the coronavirus coming in?
Yeah, I mean, think about this. The government took Chris Scott's business from him, punished the whole town by doing it.
Yep.
And he says, I don't know what else to do. I don't want to go broke. I should protest these things that the government is doing to me. And the whole town says, yeah, let's all show up too, because we're being punished too. They do that. And he goes to jail for 3 days. And then, get this, yesterday, the government would not say, and they have about 2 weeks to make their minds up, they wouldn't say if they are seeking a further term of incarceration as a sanction for breaking that judge's court order. So they've taken 2 days from Art. They've taken 3 days from Chris Scott. God knows how many days they are going to take from Tim Stevens, that poor man, and his poor family. But they could ask for more. They could ask for a further term of incarceration. So these guys, in July, when they get their judgment on the sanction, they might have to turn themselves in to serve more jail time, while Jason Kenney's up there on the Sky Palace.
And, you know, as far as I can tell, Sheila, the one person in Alberta in the political realm smiling like the Cheshire Cat has to be Rachel Notley. Not only because she also agrees with this kind of roundup and incarceration of pastors, but because she knows the conservative base is being fractured over this, and that might be her inroad into getting back in power. And I never in a million years thought I'd ever say that again. I thought she and her party ruling Alberta was a statistical anomaly, but Jason Kenney, with this kind of monkey business, he's paving the way for Rachel Notley 2.0, I think.
Yeah, never underestimate the ability of the conservative movement to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. They do it all the time. You know, and when you hear Jason Kenney's defenders, his employed defenders, the people who work for him, who are defending him, they'll say stuff like, don't be mean to Dina Hinshaw. She's using data to make these decisions. Okay, so produce it. Yeah. Because you couldn't, they refused to produce the data she used to justify the incarceration of people because they said they needed more time. How is that possible? You say you have the data, and the data supports the incarceration of these men, but when these men are trying to defend themselves in court, the government says they need more time to produce the data. You already had it.
What is it with these people that say, just look at the data, that clears us, and then not producing?
Show me the data.
Yeah. And then do they think no one's going to take them up on their offer and ask it? It's like a couple of months ago, Dr. Samantha Hill of the Ontario Medical Association saying, if you doubt that any hospital's, IC unit isn't a war zone right now because of COVID, just go and ask for a tour. And I did. And they said, well, she didn't really mean that. That was like a personal thought on live TV with tens of thousands of people watching. Yeah, this is so frustrating, Sheila. They're just, pulling stuff out of there, what.
There's so much denial in all of this. When I see these professional defenders of the locker downers out there, I think, you know what? get out of the Premier's office for a second and go talk to the people whose lives you've destroyed. Quit talking to the bureaucrats who haven't lost a penny and talk to the people you're hurting.
Yep.
But you know what? Denial is a powerful thing, because if you go talk to those people, then you can no longer convince yourself that you've done the right thing. Yeah. You have to come to serious terms with what you've done, not just to that one person you're talking to, but society as a whole. And so I really don't think they want that mask to slip. They don't want to see finally through the fog to what they've done. So they just are not going to sit down with Raquel Stevens and look those kids in the face. They just won't. They can't. They can't do it, because this denial is a protection thing that they do.
And also, Sheila, I thought as the Premier, surely the buck stops at Premier Kenny's office, or his desk rather, or is he like Premier Doug Ford here in Ontario? Oh, well, if I had my way, you see, I'd do this, but it's the team, you see, folks, it's the team. No. You're the Premier. You're the leader.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need teams. You can listen to advice from the teams and you could say, point noted, I'm still going ahead with this. That's not leadership. That's cowardice.
We didn't vote for the team.
Exactly.
We didn't vote for the team. We voted for the guy. So be the guy. Nobody voted for the chief medical officer of health. And when this is all said and done, she's still going to be the highest paid bureaucrat in the province, making more than the Premier. Nothing changes for her, whether you listen to her or not. She's still pushing paper and writing down bad ideas.
Yeah.
And nothing changes for her.
Pushing paper, not seeing patients. I love how Ezra mentioned a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of policy, let's not call these health bureaucrats top doctors, as the mainstream media likes to call them. These are bureaucrats. These are health authoritarians. Many of them haven't practiced medicine in decades, Sheila. So let's get that, vocabulary out of the mainstream. Top doctors, and when you tell me that's the highest paid bureaucrat in Alberta, man, that just gets my blood boiling.
I think they're the highest paid bureaucrats across the land. Wasn't Fauci the highest paid bureaucrat in the federal government? Correct me if I'm wrong.
You might be right, and the number of years he's held on to that position through so many flawed decisions. I mean, that guy's got more lives than the proverbial cat, but you're right. They don't really excel at medicine. They excel at keeping their six-figure or sometimes seven-figure job plus benefits, of course, and it's egregious. I think we have some more chats, don't we, Sheila?
Yes, Justin has whispered it twice in our ears. Okay, we've got a hyper chat. Got a hyper chat from Casparius. Keep up the good work. Your neighbor from the U.S. Thank you very much. We've got a hyper chat from Celtic Mutt. Khaleesi Sheila, if you have changed your mind about this, and then he sends me the Meatitarian sticker, perhaps this one will be more your speed, and it's a free Canada sticker. So no, I haven't changed my mind about the other one. I just haven't pulled the trigger on anything yet. Super U, a Super U shout from AMT60. Do you know any lawyers' numbers, or can Rebel help? Being threatened by my healthcare workplace about the jab. We have to give vax status by July 31st, and if we don't get the jab, we may be prohibited from work. We don't do a ton of employment law. We mostly just fight the tickets and summonses and fines, and in some cases, very rare cases, criminal cases that are stemming from tickets and stuff like that. So my best advice would be to reach out. Unfortunately, I'm going to direct you away from Rebel News and probably over to the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. However, we would still like to cover your story. So if you want to send us an email at tips@rebelnews.com, that will come directly to my email, and I'll disperse it to the right journalist.
But I can say this, Sheila, disturbingly, I was listening on the radio to Howard Levitt, who might indeed be Canada's #1 labor lawyer. And and his consensus is, going through the legislation, going through all the labor law, that an employer does indeed have that right to request that you take the jab in order to remain employed. And those aren't my words, folks. That's Howard Levitt, who has forgotten more about labor law than I'm ever going to learn. But when I heard that, I thought that is very disturbing indeed.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's so many people who are saying this from unionized workplaces, and you think the union would. They tell me they like to defend the rights of the employee.
Oh no!
Except
no.
more generally,
No.
they defend the rights of the union leadership to continue to take more money from the employee. Basically, that's what modern unions do these days, and it's never been more evident than now during the time of the coronavirus, where people are being forced to divulge their private medical histories to their employers just to hang on to their jobs.
Yeah.
We've got a hyper chat from Adam Wanders. Thank you for what you're doing as a Canadian and a Christian. I can see our rights being stripped away slowly. We appreciate the good media. Well, thank you very much. We've got a super U tip from Fraser McBurney. Fraser is a fightthefines.com recidivist from Hamilton, I believe. Fraser, good to see you. Thank you very much for the $10. Phrasebo says, getting ready for Dominion Day at Bayfront Park in Hamilton. Join us at 7 p.m. Pulled pork hamburgers. Well, if you're trying to lure David with food, that just might work.
Yeah, just don't be surprised if you get an email from Hamilton Bylaw fining you $560 for you consuming a burger too close to somebody. So just let that be known. That's how they roll in Steeltown now. Don't
laugh, Fraser. Be somber. No fun will be had because that's illegal too. No chuckling.
Oh, that's Peterborough.
Ontario is the worst. Just absolutely the worst. Bunch of fun burglars in charge over there. We've got a hyper chat from Rebecca Henderson. I called my PCP MP Deal Allison to tell him, I think that's Dean Allison, to tell him how angered I was back when Pastor James was in jail and the church was occupied. He said he was angry too, and it is unacceptable. Okay, great, but do something about it. I think you mean UCP MP or I don't know. I don't know, PCP. I'm not sure. I think you mean CPC. He said he needs to be publicly, I said he needs to be publicly outspoken about it because or else it doesn't matter. Yeah. Still haven't seen him publicly speak out. You won't see a single conservative speak out, one of these official conservatives from the federal party. They're all pretty mad about churches burning. I've seen a few of those, including my own MP, Garnet Jennis. He's upset about churches burning, and thanks for that. But Jason Kenney arrested 3 pastors and then fenced off a church and seized another one. I mean, he did actually change the locks on Fairview Baptist, so Tim Stevens Church. So they, even though you arrested their pastor, they can't meet. And we've got churches underground here in Alberta. But yeah, I mean, thanks for saying something about the churches burning. I guess that's something. But why didn't you say something before? But when things were happening to Christians in Alberta.
On that file, Sheila, don't you find it spectacular, there's no other word, of how little media coverage there is about this? We talked about this in the morning meeting. If these were mosques, if these were Hindu or Sikh temples, fill in the blank. This is front page news. There's probably royal inquiries. Justin Trudeau is flying to the burnt remains of the place of worship, and it's almost like radio silence.
Yeah, I wish this were treated as seriously by the Prime Minister as a little girl getting her hijab tugged at, which turned out to be a lie.
Yeah.
But 5 churches have been burned. Several have been vandalized, including one in Edmonton. It's a Polish Catholic church. They vandalized the statue of St. John Paul II outside, and just speaking to the complete idiocy of these vandals, because there has not been a more pro-Indigenous pope in the church, in the history of the church, than John Paul II. His 1984 trip through Canada was basically an apology tour, a reconciliation tour to the Indigenous people. He was upset that he couldn't make it to Fort Simpson, so he sent them a special message in 1987. I think he actually went back to Fort Simpson. The entire trip in 84 with the Pope is just pictures of him kissing Indigenous people. And, he was responsible for the naming of St. Kateri, the Lily of the Mohawks. But these vandals, they don't care because for them, it's about the destruction of the Christian religion and not about holding people to account for what they've done. And that's evident in the fact that they are burning churches attended by Indigenous people. These churches that they're burning, it's a building, sure. Yeah. But within that building, people are baptized, people are married, they're confirmed, they go through the steps of being initiated into the faith. It's the history of families. And they are, some of these churches to this day, Indigenous people attend them. And now you've burned an Indigenous congregation's place of worship. And for what? In the name of what? Reconciliation?
No, it's bringing more misery to that community, Sheila. Yeah.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. Nobody's asking the community what they want. Yeah. It's really despicable. I mean, there is a plague, a spate, a crime wave against Christian churches in Canada. And none of the official people in power are really talking about it at all. We've got some outrage from some of the official opposition. But where's Justin Trudeau? Where's the heritage minister? Some of these churches are historical sites.
Yeah.
You know? Anyway, we're right to be on a watch list, according to Josh Hawley. He's not wrong to suggest that we belong on it, because the way that the government is not taking any of these attacks on Christians seriously, I mean, someone's got to take it seriously. And if it means the United States, well, then I welcome it. We've got a hyperchat from Adam Wanders. Did Trudeau move the election? No, not yet. I wouldn't be surprised if he tried, though, but no, not yet. A hyperchat of Mimage. It's just a heart. Well, thank you. We've got a hyperchat from Binga. Green fire on your shirt, Sheila, not on you. Oh, it's not green fire. I don't know if you can see that. It's my microphone's probably in the way. It's a maple leaf with Diefenbaker's face in it. So Dief the Chief, and it's Vote Diefenbaker shirt, my favorite prime minister.
And my favorite Diefenbaker clip of all time, Sheila, and you can Google it, is him watching Paul Henderson score the winning goal in the Canada-Soviet Union Summit Series. And that's about as wild as Diefenbaker could possibly get. But yeah. I won't spoil it. Just Google that video and you'll get a chuckle.
I kind of like Diefenbaker in that he was more boring than even Scott Walker. But as it turns out, an incredible advocate for Canada's Indigenous community. Yep. So there you go, Conservatives. So we've got a Super U tip from AMT60. You gave us $2. Thank you. A Super U tip from Troy's. You tipped us $20. Well, thank you very much. You know what? Suck it, YouTube. Our generous people over on Super U are helping make up that demonetization. Troy S. Wonder what Sheila and David's thoughts are on the 4 churches that burned down in BC on reserves. I think you just got them. There's a 5th church actually now, and several vandalizations. So I'm furious about it. I think that it is the erasing of history. And if people are outraged because headstones were removed at a residential school cemetery to obscure history, burning a church does the same thing.
Exactly.
We've got a hyper chat from Rosti. Join me on Telegram. Let's take back our country. Link in the comments below. We've got a hyper chat from History Club World. To fund my little suggestion, you can make a documentary about all rebels against COVID restrictions. Follow History Club World on Instagram. I think there's a documentary just sitting there to be made just on our Fight the Fines cases. Boy, we had some characters in there and just some crazy stories, like crazy. I look back at them and I'm like, this is insane. Just, I can't even believe that we lived through that and we continue to live through it, I guess.
And you know what? An embarrassment of riches of archival videos we have in this last year and a half, Sheila, mainly because Again, talk about media self-censorship. They rarely, almost never came out to these anti-lockdown protests. And I'm sorry, when there are, in some cases, thousands of people, in Montreal, 100,000 people gathering and marching through the streets, I don't care if you don't like the message. That's news. You're obligated to get out there and cover it. But we have all that footage, and I think that's a good suggestion. That's a future documentary in waiting.
Yes, I think we have a documentary on the persecution of Christians during COVID too.
Yeah.
So much of the footage we have is exclusive. So let's keep going. Joyful art from the heart. Am flying a Canadian flag on my porch on Canada Day. God keep our land glorious and free. Might I suggest you call it Dominion Day so that you don't offend David Menzies?
You know, it's unbelievable. I've always been against the term Canada Day, and with the idea of replacing it, going back to the historical name Dominion Day. And lo and behold, I never thought I'd see a day that we have right now, where you have all municipalities right across Canada, Sheila, actually canceling Canada Day, but not replacing it with anything. They're just canceling it out of wokeness, and I think that's shameful.
Yeah, they sort of came around to your way of thinking, but they didn't quite get all the way there.
Exactly.
Rumble chat from Frog Soup says his parents brought him here from the USSR in the early 1990s. They confirm it is exactly what the Soviets did to them. Wow. I was reading up the other day, because someone tried to fact check me when I said that Pope John Paul II, Saint Pope John Paul II, his mother was actually an Eastern Rite Catholic, and that in some of his speeches and comments, that was one of the reasons why he was so pro-Indigenous, but also pro-Eastern Rite Church, is that if you have a universal church, you want it to be reflective of the culture that it serves, right? And someone tried to fact check me on that, and I ended up on one heck of a rabbit hole about just how first the Tsars and then the Soviets, they really worked to eliminate the Greek Catholic Church in that realm of the world, just to Russianify it. And there's some strong overlays with what's happening here, that there's only one way apparently to worship God, and that's the way that Jason Kenney says is acceptable on Zoom or YouTube. I lost my place. I'm sorry. Oh, hyper chat from Binga. Sorry, Sheila. Meant we all see what looks like green fire on your shirt. Shout out to Justin. I think I explained it. Justin, there you go. We've got a hyper chat from History Club World. Do you think that Canada needs to get a new constitution, one that places stronger restrictions on the government, strengthens rights and personal freedoms? Also, do you know if MLA Barnes is up to anything since he got kicked from caucus? I've heard nothing. You know what? He's speaking out. He has been speaking at some rallies. I think he's written some articles for the Western Standard since. I mean, he's working very hard from within the caucus, but there's just basically two, or from outside the caucus, but there's just really two MLAs who are independent now because of their opposition to the lockdown. So, I mean, he's in an uphill battle. Oh, with regard to getting a new constitution, we can't even get the current one amended to protect property rights. So,
good point. That'll never happen, Sheila.
So don't open up a big can of worms like that. I mean, the government was sinister, crazy like a fox when they limited, when they put reasonable restrictions on all of your charter rights. Because what is a reasonable restriction, right? It can be anything. And
now that you've mentioned this, going back to what I was saying earlier about Canada's top labor lawyer, Howard Levitt, saying that, it looks like employers can indeed demand that you be vaccinated. One of the arguments is a constitutional one, namely that there's nothing in the Constitution that says you have the right to employment. It just doesn't exist. So you can't make a constitutional argument against this, which is more fuel for the fodder in terms of what awaits us in the new world of vaccine passports, I should think.
We've got a hyper chat from History Club World. This is a weird hyper chat, friend, because it says, do you think Rebel News will ever get the same prestige as the mainstream media? I'm not sure they have prestige. I think the confidence in the mainstream media and the trust in the mainstream media continues to be at an all-time low, thanks to the behavior of the mainstream media and Justin Trudeau giving them money to maintain that terrible behavior. So if that's prestige, I don't want it.
And you know what a prime example of that is, Sheila, just on the heels of Catherine McKenna saying she will not run again. Go online to macleans.ca, folks, and watch I got to keep my words PG rated here, but just read that story, which is basically, heavy on, this is a woman. Yeah, there it is. Why would anyone hate Catherine McKenna? And,
give me a break.
And surely this puff piece had nothing to do with Catherine McKenna's house husband, Scott Gilmore, being a contributing editor to Maclean's, right? And has nothing to do with Maclean's magazine receiving federal tax dollars to keep it alive, and talk about a periodical on life support, Sheila, used to be a weekly, 52 weeks a year. It's now a monthly, 12 issues a year. But just look at that headline. And just look at the conflict of interest. That's the media now. They're not watchdogs. They're lapdogs. They are the Praetorian Guard to protect their friends. And that story is so shameful. Please read it if you can stand it.
That's another thing, too. Like when she said she's leaving politics. I mistakenly said she's resigning. That's not the case. She's just not running again. So this is like the long, insufferable goodbye where everybody says how wonderful she is when she isn't. But, how bad really is it that every time you get a mean tweet, the mainstream media en masse writes articles about how wonderful you are?
Yeah.
How tough is your life when you have the entire mainstream media defending you against the citizens? Anyway, let's keep going. The rest of that hyperchat says, I also watched a CTV W5 documentary about the Aylmer Church, and I think they used your footage uncredited.
Oh.
Well, I'm going to have to watch. I think that is actually on YouTube, on CTV's YouTube, and I'll look, because if that's the case, we should send them a bill.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at least give us credit. Holy moly, Sheila, that's unbelievable. But we've been victimized by that before, too.
Yeah, and we just send a bill.
Yeah.
Here's a bill. We've got a hyper chat from History Club World. Something I find strange about the residential schools is how Trudeau is trying to put all the blame off onto the Catholic Church instead of his father and the government. I don't think that's strange. I think that makes perfect sense. And I think Jean Chrétien is still alive, and he played a pretty significant role in that, but we're all just pretending like that's not the case. We're suddenly holding all Catholics across the world to account for the actions of some inside these residential schools enabled by the government.
Yep.
There are people who played pretty significant roles in the residential school problem who are still alive.
100%.
In the Liberal Party, and nobody's talking about that.
That's right. And Pierre Elliott Trudeau did indeed sign off on the native residential schools, as you well know, Sheila. So what I'm curious about is, and not that I want this to happen, okay, but I am curious, why aren't Pierre Elliott Trudeau statues being toppled right now? Why is there not a petition to change the name of Montreal's airport, Pierre Elliott Trudeau Airport, to something else? It's really weird how cancel culture works, isn't it, Sheila?
Yeah, it's strange. It's almost like it only goes one way. Like, what was that yesterday? One of those left-wing hate mob insiders, their YouTube channel was killed.
Oh, yeah.
After spending years advocating for the censorship of other people. Careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. But when they complained, unlike if a conservative complained, when they complained, they were reinstated. Isn't that weird? A hyper chat from Rebecca Henderson. Sorry for the typo. My phone keeps acting up. I meant Dean Allison, the Federal Conservative Party. I hate autocorrect. I do too. And usually my typos go viral on Twitter. A couple hundred retweets, and I'm like, I spelled everything wrong on there. Everything.
Who is responsible for autocorrect? I can't tell you the number of embarrassing emails and texts I've sent that totally changed the message thanks to some ghost in the machine that is thinking for me and says, oh, obviously he means this. And so a compliment turns into an insult. Who's responsible for that, Sheila?
The creator of autocorrect obviously thought that people use the word ducking a lot more than they do. That's all I have to say.
I'm glad you handled that hot potato with such class.
Seriously, how often does the word ducking come up in conversation? We've got a hyper chat from History Club World. Why don't we learn about Diefenbaker in schools, but we learn about the eugenicist Tommy Douglas or Trudeau one? Isn't that right? The answer to your question of why is that Diefenbaker was a conservative. That's why. So you'll never learn about the good things that he did for Canada's First Nations. You just won't. Hyper chat, Rebecca Henderson, have we heard anything from the hair salon owner in St. Catharines who is criminally charged?
Do you know, that would be Alicia Herder. I absolutely adore this lady. She's a fighter. She's courageous. She's kind of gone under the, the radar right now. And I can understand it. I mean, she has been victimized by everybody from bylaw to the local media to the online trolls, and it has been so hateful and so vindictive. And keep in mind, folks, this is the lady in January who made headlines, front page of the Toronto Sun. She found a way to get around, well, I shouldn't say get around, because she was following the rules, such as they were, to reestablish her hair salon as a film production company. And so you wouldn't be going in there to get haircuts, you'd be doing an audition, and she had the camera set up and the lighting and everything. And very importantly, on tape, she had somebody with the City of St. Catharines bylaw saying, yep, you're good to go. It's fine what you're doing. And then I guess the city had buyer's remorse. And man, they came after her like a mob right out of a Frankenstein movie. And you know what? Now that you mention it, I'm going to reach out to her and find out what's going on. I didn't hear back from my last text to her, but it is absolutely shameful what happened to her. And the twist in the story, Sheila, like I said, she had the blessing of the city, and then they changed the rules in the bottom of the ninth inning.
That poor lady has been put through the ringer by the government, but also from the media.
Oh, yeah.
The media, mainstream media, has been just atrocious to her. They've been part and parcel in inciting a mob against her. Yep. And she's in a world of trouble, all because she refused to go broke. Really, that's it. At the end of the day, that's the problem with these businesses, is that they just would not go bankrupt when the government was trying to make them go bankrupt. Yeah. We've got a, I don't know, chat, doesn't say, Justin, from Celtic Mutt. Fly your Canada flags upside down on Dominion Day. You can fly them however you want. I realize that flying flags upside down is the sign of distress. So you see a lot of that actually at protests. Yeah. But on my farm, it's just the Alberta flag. That's all we've got around here.
It's a pretty flag.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Well designed. I'm happy about it. I think we'll keep it when we eventually go.
What's the over-under in terms of a year for that, Sheila?
Oh, God. If they would just ask us. Just ask us if we want to go. Anyway, we've got a hyper chat from History Club World. If you were to make a movie, what would it be about? I think David and I just sort of talked about that. I know that I feel like we have a movie in us about the persecution of Christians during the pandemic. I think we have one in us about the normals and the businesses who are hammered by the lockdown, just a Fight the Fines documentary. I think people would be interested to see like our thought process of how Fight the Fines came to be, because we basically started a civil liberties law firm, a nationwide civil liberties law firm with paralegals and lawyers in all the provinces. And we have an incredible coordinator who works in the office, and all these journalists who care deeply about telling the stories. And we created this like fundraising juggernaut so that we could keep helping more and more people. Now I think we're up to about 2,000 people across the country. And we did this from the ground up with just an idea in a staff meeting saying, well, we got to help these people.
And
and it started really with Art Pawlowski.
Yeah. and thank God for Ezra, Sheila, because we would have been just as busy simply covering these stories. Like, look at the outrage, and isn't this a shame, and doesn't he or she deserve better? But instead, we have gone to bat for these victims, and that's what they are. They are victims of an oppressive government penalizing people for having the temerity just to open their doors and go get into business. Asking for the same kind of respect and courtesy that Walmart and Costco get. So I think this is one of the proudest moments in our company's history, Sheila, that Ezra, with his legal backing, said, you know what? We're not going to let these people be trampled. We're going to represent them. We're going to try to get them a modicum of justice here.
Yeah, and for me, I think Fight the Fines has really changed the way I think about journalism, or at least my own journalism. It's one thing to tell the stories of the people that the fancy people don't seem to care about, right? Like the normals of the world. I think of myself as a normal. And so often they deal with the consequences of the bad decisions of the elite people who are never affected by the decisions. Carbon tax is a great example of that. Oh, you can bring in a carbon tax that makes life more expensive for everybody. Well, you can afford to pay for it, but what about everybody else? And so before, I would tell those stories. But now, because of Fight the Fines, there's an added layer. So not only do I tell those stories, which is one of the great reasons why I work at Rebel News, is I'm able to tell the stories of the normals, but I'm now able to offer a solution to so many people. So like, this is the worst day. This is your worst day in your life in a very long time. You've lost your job because of the lockdown. Now you're getting these tickets. You don't know what it's going to do to your family, because financial strife is one of the #1 reasons that families come apart. And I say, don't worry about it. We got it. We got it. We'll help you fight. And all these other people across the country that you don't even know, they're going to give you moral support every single day by their donations to Fight the Fines. Because that's one of the things about Fight the Fines is, your donations are financial, but your financial donation is like a shot in the arm, that's not the jab, to these people who are standing up against the lockdown. They're people who are getting ticketed for just living their lives and trying to be normal, not wearing a mask when you can't wear a mask, having a birthday party, trying to get back into your own country. These are normal things. These are not criminal activities. And so for them, they're getting help, which I think they deserve, but they're getting all this moral support when they feel alone. And when the problem in front of them feels insurmountable, they have thousands of Canadians cheering them on.
And isn't it great, Sheila, when we score a victory? And to this day, my favorite case is still yours. The senior in New Brunswick having a coffee and a muffin in his car by himself and getting harassed by that creep of a Mountie who actually, after the video went up, threatened to sue us for putting the video up, and they went down in flaming disaster on that one. And then basically, was it Thompson was the senior's name, Sheila? What was there's been so many.
Walter Matheson.
Walter Matheson. Thank you. And we scored a victory there. The Crown threw in the towel on that. So, that and how perverse was that? And by the way, thank goodness Mr. Matheson had his tape recorder running, because otherwise we really don't have much of a case. And that's a cautionary tale, isn't it, Sheila? When you think something's going to go sideways, get out your phone and at least make an audio tape, because otherwise it's he said, she said. It's not much of a case anymore. But that is still my favorite, that the idea that this law enforcement officer thought that a senior sitting in his car was a magnet for all the teenagers in town to come hang out. Right?
Yeah.
Just unbelievable.
Old Walt's down at the Tim Hortons sitting in his Buick. Get the skateboards. You know, like, give me a break. These people are crazy. That had everything. And then the cop's lawyer was a failed Liberal candidate. Like, that story was just with everything.
And she wrote one of the most unprofessional legal letters, full of spelling and grammatical errors. And it was clear as you're reading this dummy hasn't even seen the video. She doesn't know what she's talking about. You know, I hope she didn't get any money for that. That was the most shoddy lawyering work I've ever seen.
Yeah, no, her letter that she sent me had more typos than my Twitter account. Like, it was just terrible, just really bad. Anyways, we're like a half an hour over time, so we should wrap this up.
Okay.
We've got a hyper chat from History Club World. By prestige, he means the ability to be in Parliament and have foreign companies working with it, not the corruption. I really don't care to talk to politicians. I really don't. Again, that's the pandemic for me, changing how I think about journalism. I can go to the Alberta legislature. I'm accredited through the Speaker's office. It's just that I'm so busy telling the stories of the people hurt by politicians that I really don't care to talk to the politicians and listen to them lie to me and try to make excuses for it. I find that politicians are best attacked and questioned when they're least expecting it, and they are expecting it in Parliament, and they're expecting it in the legislature. So I'd much rather, you know, surprise them at a pancake breakfast or something like that.
Or, Sheila, you could run for office and be an element of change within the political system, and you would win.
David. I don't know why everybody just, it's like torture. I'd rather go to Gitmo. Like, it's a special circle of hell being in politics for somebody like me. I don't know. Awful, especially the pandemic. Nothing has turned me off the idea of good people getting in politics than the pandemic, because people I thought were good, decent conservatives working in a bad system are actually just bad people in a bad system with no morals and just wanting to be in power.
How sad.
It's very sad. But I'm glad I know. You know what? More than anything, I'm glad I know now. I'm glad I know these things about these people. We've got a hyper chat from Rebecca Henderson. Tell Alicia that my heart goes out to her as a fellow Niagara person, and that she has my support. Oh, that's very nice, Rebecca. And again, see, that's what I'm talking about. The moral support for these people like Alicia, who you're taking on this big behemoth of government. It feels impossible. You feel alone. But then you realize, thanks to our coverage, you know that all these people actually care and support what you're doing. And I think we're all caught up now.
Fantastic. Well, you know what? Wow, we went over a half an hour, but it was worth it. It was all gold. Thank you to Mr. Producer. Thank you to the Khaleesi, of course. And folks, like I said, the Menzies t-shirt, let's make this a bestseller. Be the, fashion hot plate of the summer of 2021 by wearing these. And like I said before, first one I see in public coming up to me wearing one of these shirts, there's a brownie for you. So
I'm ordering it right now.
you are disqualified. In the meantime, Sheila and I, we won't see you on Dominion Day. We're off, so we'll see you next Tuesday. In the meantime, stay sane.